Welcome back to Newsline, and we are now joined by Homa Bay Member of Parliament, Peter Kaluma, in his capacity as a Vice Chairperson of the Constitution, Implementation and Oversight Committee of the National Assembly. They're currently on a retreat in Mombasa. It's a working retreat. There are so many pending bills in Parliament that they are considering. We tonight are interested in two of them, including a proposal that has been made by a section of members of Parliament. Good to see you, Wakili, tonight. Let's begin where Jeff Kirui left it. He spoke to the chairman of CIOC, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. Jeremiah Kioni says that, confirms to Jeff that yes, indeed, there is a proposal from a section of members of Parliament, among them to have the return of the position of the Prime Minister and two deputies, also to have two deputy presidents. Is this something that you have heard along the corridors, because it's not gotten to the clerk? And what will this mean, if at all, to legislation and the Constitution as it is?
Yes, I thank you, Ken. We are at the coast to transact several bills which have been pending before the committee. Some of these bills have been processed properly by Parliament. Others are, of course, still, proposals. So we decided to retreat. In a short while we'll be going back to Parliament to consider all of them and to have a committee position on them. The one we were considering today is the matter of a bill to amend the Constitution to enable the President appoint ministers or cabinet secretaries from among members of Parliament, and also to require the governor to appoint members of the County Executive Committee, who are the county ministers, from among members of the County Assembly.
Okay.
Now, that particular bill, Ken, has been processed by Parliament from 2019, and it was published in February 2020. So it is something the committee is dealing with in spite of other initiatives to amend the Constitution which have been going on. Now, as you rightly say, there are several members of Parliament, some even within the Committee on Implementation of the Constitution, in which I'm Vice Chair, who are of the view that unless there is some urgent intervention, the protected constituencies, particularly around Mount Kenya and several parts of the country, under the Constitution, will be lost. So they believe that being that the BBI process is still in court, there should be some intervention at the level of Parliament to salvage those constituencies so that they are not lost. Of course, there are some MPs also who believe that the additional positions which were proposed in BBI, like the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Ministers, should be established. But in respect of that, we still don't have a bill before us. We will.
I think we lost your sound. Mheshimiwa, we're going to come back to you. We try and rectify your sound. I think we lost your sound. Speaking to Honorable Peter Kaluma, Homa Bay Member of Parliament there, discussing about their retreat in Mombasa, which is a working retreat, and CIOC, as he says, considering a lot of bills that have been pending before Parliament. So if we have Honorable Kaluma, we'll speak to him once more on this. And sorry we lost you earlier, but you can now continue. I guess we have your sound. All right, we're still sorting that sound out, but today Jeff Kirui spoke to the chairperson of CIOC, who's Jeremiah Kioni, and he indeed confirmed the same thing Honorable Kaluma is confirming to us, that there are members of Parliament, a section of leaders who believe that some of the proposals that were made in the BBI should indeed be now taken up by Parliament, and indeed they should see light of day. Those proposals include the one that would see the position of Prime Minister created, the position of Deputy Prime Ministers created, but they're going further to increase some proposals, and in that they're saying there's even need for the two positions of Deputy President created and added in the Constitution. Constitutional quagmire, looking at Article 255 and how this will be possible. We are also talking about the bills that have made it to Parliament and discussed. In fact, the one that Honorable Kaluma was talking about was has already been discussed, and indeed it's gone through public participation. Honorable Kaluma, my apologies one more time, but we lost your sound. We're now back. Perhaps you can now proceed on the basis of the members of Parliament who have been making other proposals aside from what you have considered and indeed public participation undertaken.
Yes, so the proposal to have the position of Prime Minister created and even the position of Deputy Prime Ministers is a proposal which is still along the corridors. It is not yet before us formally for consideration. So far, nothing has been drafted. Okay. But because it is a matter that even members of the committee are mentioning, we did indicate that we could hear them on why they are putting forth those proposals tomorrow. Okay.
I'll ask you this question before I go back to my initial one. Is this a bipartisan process? Is it supported from across the board, especially the bills that you are considering right now, that have the bills that have come to you as a committee? Is this bipartisan, or there are divided members on this?
No, you see, when bills are committed to a committee by Parliament, they are considered by that committee.
Yes.
And that is something that invites the consideration of all members of the committee. It does not have to be bipartisan. Of course, each individual member have their decision to take when the vote is taken on the matter.
Okay. The attempt to have some of these proposals and the fact that are being discussed, notwithstanding, you told me back in 2019, it's a parliamentary bill that was originated. At 2020, it was already even long before the BBI process, which we know began after the handshake in 2018. The people who are watching and listening to you tonight and thinking, is this a way that Parliament want to sneak behind what the High Court did, the Constitutional Court, and what the Court of Appeal did? What do you tell them?
Yes, Ken, Parliament does not stop working because there are other processes to either amend the Constitution or to make laws. And Parliament does not stop working because there are judicial processes. Some of us, including myself, strongly believe the High Court and the Court of Appeal committed errors, but the legislative authority of Parliament does not stop. So these are processes being undertaken by Parliament in the exercise of its mandate in spite of the BBI judicial challenges or any other initiatives to amend any law or the Constitution outside there.
Okay, let's look at the rationale, Mheshimiwa. Let's begin with the proposal to have the Prime Minister and two positions of the Prime Minister. You know, this has been argued by the opponents of the BBI, and I like to relate it to BBI because they existed in both. What is the rationale? Why is it necessary to have the position of the Prime Minister and two deputies? Because the argument on the other side is reward and creating a top that is heavy unnecessarily, because if that was to happen, we should have done it in 2010. But Parliament is coming to consider this right now. So what is the rationale of first having the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister? Why is it even necessary?
Yeah, we will listen to the MPs making those proposals tomorrow, Ken. As I've told you, the committee is yet to deliberate on the matter. But, Ken, we have tested our current constitution for 10 years now. And you know it establishes a presidential system. Now, we had a hybrid system in our old constitution. And I think the experiences we have more so at the level of Parliament are indicating that in terms of securing better accountability and even ensuring a cheaper form of administration, a system where members of Parliament are ministers are both cheaper, is more accountable, is more responsive to the needs of the people being represented in Parliament outside there. Now, if you are going to have all those in Parliament, the ministers in Parliament, then as a matter of course, there will be a Prime Minister to be in charge of government businesses and having their time, again, to account to the representatives of the people in the House.
That notwithstanding that the discussion is going on tomorrow, there's still a viewer out there who's looking at what the committee is considering, and it doesn't sit well that Parliament is considering this tonight.
Well, the mandate to legislate, both in terms of considering constitutional amendments and even to make laws, is a mandate given to Parliament by the Constitution. And I don't think, Ken, that Parliament will stop doing what they are required by the Constitution to do because some individual outside there thinks otherwise. That is not how institutions of governance created by the Constitution work. So Parliament will proceed as Parliament and as a legislative house up to the time there will be new Parliament.
But, Mheshimiwa, you'll need concurrence from the public. Such bills must have public participation. So if you dismiss them, that regardless of what they feel out there, when the rubber hits the road and there's public participation, they'll have to raise those queries.
Yeah, can I agree with you? All processes of Parliament are subject to public participation as a requirement of the Constitution.
Yes.
And of course, Parliament does not make laws for itself. If Parliament proposes a constitutional amendment which the people are against, and they say so during public participation, the views of the people are carried forth by Parliament, and the bill dies.
Yes.
That does not mean that Parliament sits back doing nothing because there is the potential that people may be of a contrary view.
Okay.
Parliament, just like our law courts and the executive arm of government, must do its work.
Okay. You have a front row seat, Mheshimiwa, in the committee as the vice chairperson. You've listened to sentiments. I'm sure before the discussions begin tomorrow, you must have heard the rationale and the reasoning behind some of these proposals that have been presented before you. My interest is the replication of what happens in the national government in terms of appointment from within Parliament. Governors are going to appoint from within the county assemblies. Talk to me about that, together with the fact that the President will consider the Attorney General as a member of Cabinet.
Yes, Ken, that limb we discussed today, and you remember I mentioned before the current Constitution we were under that arrangement. Currently, Ken, you know, we have cabinet secretaries outside Parliament there. The fact of the matter is that when you have members of Parliament as ministers, then they are only paid some small additional responsibility allowance. The salary remains the salary of a member of Parliament. Unlike now, where you have all those cabinet secretaries, you know, earning with all those facilities around them. So this parliamentary system is naturally far, far cheaper. You can imagine the facilities we have around, you know, the cabinet secretaries there, and their salaries and all their payments.
Yes.
We also believe, and this is a matter of constitutional and governance law, that when you have the ministers in Parliament, they tend to be more accountable. I mean, Ken, you've been coming to Parliament, and you see situations where Parliament is handicapped. You ask a question concerning your people, and the person coming to respond to you is a fellow member of Parliament. And when you have follow-up questions, they adjourn the discussion to go and search for the cabinet secretary again. And you know, parliamentary procedure is that you again resubmit the question and it takes another 6 months.
6 months, yes.
Yeah, so it is ineffective, this system in which we are.
Okay.
So we are proposing a cheaper system, we are proposing a more accountable system, we are proposing a more responsive system, and we are not proposing it from outside there. This is something we had experimented with.
And it worked?
From independence up to the time we had this current constitution.
Okay, talk to me about the AG, the proposal about the AG.
Yeah, it is being proposed in the bill we were discussing today that the president may assign the Attorney General the roles and functions of a cabinet secretary. Yeah, so that in addition to being just the principal legal advisor to the government, the president, for instance, may say that as Attorney General you are assigned the duties of which would otherwise be performed by the Minister for Constitutional Affairs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not making Attorney General a cabinet secretary or minister.
Okay.
But it is empowering the president to assign the Attorney General duties of a cabinet secretary where the president deems that necessary.
And one of the reasons that informed this, is it because of the limited number of cabinet secretaries that exist, so you're just expanding them?
No, the number of cabinet secretaries will remain at 22, and assigning the Attorney General the roles of a cabinet secretary does not make him a cabinet secretary.
Does not make it 23.
So it does not expand the numbers.
Does not make it 23. He'll just be performed.
Because
okay. Okay. Lastly, I have about
he can only perform those functions of a cabinet secretary.
Yes.
It does not make him a cabinet secretary.
Cabinet secretary. All right, Mheshimiwa, I have about 4 minutes on the clock, and I'd like to discuss one of the hot topics in the country currently. That's the flare-ups that we are experiencing in Laikipia, and we saw also what happened in Kakamega. But I want to go to Laikipia specifically. They say every election cycle, this happens every fourth year, a year before the general election, it happens. I don't want to discuss Laikipia, but in that context, the NCIC was here yesterday on Kivumbi 2022, and one of the things they said is that looking up to Parliament to enact legislations that would empower them to take more punitive action against politicians, including banning them from running, including maybe other sanctions that are more punitive than it exists currently. The fact that they are mapping the hotspots and they are doing that, they're asking for more power. Is there a bill before you, because you said at the beginning there's so many pending bills, is there a bill before you that is as likely to enhance the powers of NCIC to ensure that the coming elections are more peaceful and politicians who are creating all this division are actually held to account?
Yes, the Committee on Administration and National Security, in which I also sit, has had several meetings with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. And it is true that legislative proposal has been deliberated upon on several occasions. We have put in very punitive measures, including barring any leader who, incites the public into, those situations we are seeing in Laikipia and other parts of the country. So that bill, I believe, has been discussed by that committee. I'm told the National Cohesion and Integration Commission has also been considering it with the Committee on Equal Opportunities. But it's a bill we had approved to proceed for publication and consideration by Parliament.
Okay. So there is fear that Parliament is frustrating NCIC and frustrating the enactment of this bill, because at the end of the day, they're the first clients of NCIC and they're the ones polarizing the country.
Not true. If you spoke with NCIC, they will tell you that the initial legislative proposal they brought in the matter was even tightened and made more stringent in terms of the punitive measures against hate speech by the members of Parliament sitting in the Committee on Administration and National Security. In fact, in our view, it is NCIC which is delaying the publication of that law.
Okay. All right. Peter Opondo Kaluma, Member of Parliament, Homa Bay, and of course he's speaking to me tonight as the Vice Chairperson of the Constitutional. Implementation and Oversight Committee, currently in Mombasa on a retreat, considering several bills, including the ones originated by Parliament, but are yet to see light of day. They are going back to look at them, plus a lot of other proposals. That's where our interview ends, but we still have a lot coming on the other side, including business and sports, and still other stories for you. Stay with the Newsline. We're back in a moment.